All right, and thanks everybody. I know people are still coming in. Nice to see folks on the line. Kevin Boyce, Jen Beck, nice to see you. Steve Linthicum, nice to see you. I know folks are dropping their information in, so please continue to do so. Introduce yourself, and if you're connected with an apprenticeship program, let us know which apprenticeship program it's connected with. And as people sign in, hopefully others will get the sense of what to do. So my name is Caleb Van Docto. I'm with Social Policy Research Associates. I'm glad to welcome everybody to the November CAI webinar. This is going to be an exciting one. We have a conversation with Lul Tesfai from New America. And we also have on the line with us John Fox, who's the president of AmTac, Inc. And we're going to have a conversation about strategies to build high-quality college-connected apprenticeships. Here's some nice looking-ish pictures of us. And before I get too embarrassed, maybe we can even move forward. I want to put out an initial question just to get folks thinking about this. You'll notice if you're on if you're on Zoom, the Zoom platform, there is a participant list. If you don't see that, you can click it's usually near the bottom of the screen. There's a list of icons such as the chat box, etc., where you can see participant lists. And if you bring up the participant list, you can see buttons near the bottom. You should see buttons that say yes or no, or go slower, or go faster, etc. And so using either those buttons, or if it's easier through just typing into chat, let us know if you're administering an apprenticeship program. If you're administering an apprenticeship program, does it offer college credit or degrees? And we're really just kind of getting a general temperature of what's out there, what programs are out there, what people are doing. There's no right or wrong answer. Nobody is going to knock you if it's one thing or another. We just want to get a temperature of what it's like in California. And I'll give folks a moment to answer. Okay, and we only have a couple of folks that are answering. I know that there's more out there, and I know there's a number of folks that are on the phone as well. But just as a reminder, if you are administering this question right up on the screen, and it should be in the managing participants line, you can also just type it into the chat. You can say a yes or a no, or whatever's easiest. So far, I've got just a couple of yeses. Okay, so with that question, I know people are probably still thinking about it. It's also possible that there may be, great, thank you, Jim, for answering into the chat too. I realize that some folks may not have those buttons available, and so if that's the case, you can also use chat to say yes. So we're going to be talking about what these sorts of programs, what programs look like that are connected to apprenticeship programs that are connected to college credit and degrees, and kind of get a bigger picture of not just what exists out there, but also where the trajectory is a little bit. And to help facilitate this conversation, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague and mentor informal, Vince Kohler. Vince, are you on the line?
I'm on. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Caleb, and thanks to everyone for joining us this morning. It's great. I'm really excited about this particular topic, and I'm also excited that I'll get to introduce it a little bit, introduce the folks who are talking, and then get the conversation going. I'm glad that so many of you are on and already offering apprenticeships for credit and for degree. So this is great. And those of you who are not, this should help you answer some of the questions. There's no doubt that apprenticeship is experiencing an amazing renaissance in California, and you guys are all part of this. But it's also true that there are still some reputational issues. This is partly historical, probably because of its blue-collar roots, and partly because most people just don't know about it in the first place. But one of the knocks on apprenticeship is that it does not lead to a degree, and therefore, in a kind of college for all world, it's perceived to be second class. We all know that it does not have to be that way. There are plenty of programs that have demonstrated that apprenticeship and college don't have to be an either-or choice. And in fact, we really want to make sure that as apprenticeship grows, and if we want to have it grow to the level that the economy needs and that job seekers want and that the governor has called for, then we have to work very hard to make sure that apprenticeship is not so much an alternative to college, but a way through and to college. And obviously, one way to do that is to make sure that it goes hand in hand with credit and with a degree. Some of the best resources on this topic come out of New America, a think and do tank that includes some of the leading thinkers on education reform and also on apprenticeship, and three of them you have right on your screen right now. And that's why I'm super excited to have Lul Tesfai, the author of the paper on the left, College-Connected Apprenticeships, on College-Connected Apprenticeships out of the New America shop on the line. Prior to joining, the other two papers that I want to mention briefly, and I don't know whether Lul is going to go into them, but I thought I'd bring them up. We'll include links in the chat so that you can read them at your leisure after this session's over. There are some examples that were documented on state policy approaches to support college-connected apprenticeships, and then the recommendations that Mary Alice McCarthy, the head of the department at New America, the education department at New America, put out with colleagues on connecting apprenticeship and higher education. So this is kind of the theses of this is the way to get it done. But first, let's talk about how to connect connect apprenticeships to college degrees and to credit-bearing programs through this presentation by Lul. Prior to joining New America, Lul was a senior policy director at CNA Education, and she had also, before that, served as director of policy in the Office of Career Technical Education, OCTE, at the U.S. Department of Education. She's connected to California. In fact, I understand that she is in California right now, even though her perch often is now in Washington, D.C. But she also worked as a policy consultant for the California Senate Office of Research. And, you know, her degree is from Cal. So she has many great connections to our great state. So, Lul, are you on? And can I turn this over to you?
Thank you, Vince and John and Caleb, for the introduction and for the kind of remarks that you shared about college-connected apprenticeships. Again, my name is Lul Tesfai. I'm a senior policy analyst with New America, which is a think tank based in Washington, D.C. And since 2016, we've been doing quite a bit of research and work around apprenticeships. So Vince mentioned our previous work that focused on federal policy to really strengthen connections between apprenticeship systems and higher education systems. We've also done a fair bit of work around youth apprenticeship in New America in partnership with a number of other organizations, leads the Partnership to Advance Youth Apprenticeship, which is both funding local youth apprenticeship programs and states who are trying to develop a robust youth apprenticeship strategy, but also pulling together resources to help the field more broadly advance youth apprenticeship as a quality education and training strategy. And building on the work that we did around federal policy to support connections between apprenticeship and higher education systems, lately we've been looking at what quality programs that offer youth and adults post-secondary credits and access to degrees actually look like. So just to take a step back as to why we decided to embark on this work, we know there's a lot of interest in apprenticeship and a lot of interest in making sure that apprenticeship opportunities really create pathways to a variety of workers. And that's because we know that post-secondary credentials matter here in California and across the country. Increasingly, having post-secondary certificates and degrees are required for career entry and advancement. And we also know that the apprenticeship model is particularly effective based on the rigorous information we have about the registered apprenticeship system. We know that apprentices that participate in that particular model are more likely to be employed and retain employment and experience wage increases because of what the apprenticeship model offers. But we also know that higher education is not accessible to everyone. One reason being the cost of higher education, another reason being the format of some higher education options. And so there's a real need to explore better ways to better connect these two disparate systems that have not always communicated well with one another in order to make sure that we're offering more options to youth and adults. And one other thing I'll mention, New America does an annual survey of opinions about higher education. And in the 2019 survey, we found that a majority of people actually believe that apprenticeship is a highly effective education and training model, but significantly more people indicated that they would recommend apprenticeship for their children or a friend if it had strong connections to post-secondary degrees. So that's part of the reason why we've been doing work in this space. So we have interviewed and done case studies of a number of different programs throughout the United States. And as part of that research, we put together a taxonomy to really categorize the different types of apprenticeship models that exist. You know, one model being the traditional model, where you have the related technical instruction being offered outside of the formal higher education credit-bearing system. Then there's college-connected apprenticeships, and we heard from John earlier in the webinar about a particular college-connected apprenticeship where students have the opportunity to earn post-secondary credits or even certificates as part of their apprenticeship experience. And the value of these programs, particularly in emerging industries like IT and healthcare and financial services, is it gets people on a pathway to a post-secondary degree if that's indeed what they need in order to enter a profession and advance in a profession. And on the opposite end of the spectrum is what we call degree apprenticeships. It's a model that's actually fairly common in Europe. The United Kingdom has been most recently introducing a number of policy and financing reforms to increase the availability of degree apprenticeship programs. But it's basically an apprenticeship program that by design culminates in an associate's or a bachelor's degree. And I'll talk a little bit more about what the common features are of these. So as I mentioned, traditional apprenticeships are non-credit. The training provider could be an employer, a union, even a community college, but the key distinguishing feature is that the training does not come with post-secondary credit. The probably greatest share of apprenticeship programs fall into traditional, but also college-connected apprenticeships. And there are a few different kinds that we uncovered as part of our research. One being a model where a college, we primarily focused on community colleges as part of this research, given the history that they have in working with employers and developing customized training and serving as a related technical instruction provider for apprenticeships. But one model is a hybrid where the related technical instruction is comprised of both non-credit and for-credit courses. Another model of college-connected apprenticeships involves awarding credit for non-college experience retroactively. So if you're familiar with the Registered Apprenticeship College Consortium, it includes a number of community colleges and registered apprenticeship sponsors that have all agreed to award post-secondary credit, articulate apprenticeship experiences to post-secondary credits. And some of those credits may be towards degree requirements. Some of those credits might be towards elective requirements. There's a great deal of variability, but this is a model that's pretty widespread. And then, of course, just for-credit coursework as part of an apprenticeship program falls under the category of college-connected apprenticeships. And then lastly are degree apprenticeships, where there are two main types, both of which culminate in a degree. But there's also what we're seeing in a few areas, this idea of a competency-based degree apprenticeship, where the college is not just offering for-credit related technical instruction, but is actually awarding academic credit for a portion of the learning that takes place at the job site. And I'll talk through a couple of examples of where we're seeing competency-based degree apprenticeships. Now, the model that a college might choose to pursue will certainly vary based on the occupational requirements, based on the skills demands of employers, and also based on their institutional structure and resources to build these programs. But let's talk through a couple of them that are in existence right now. Trident Tech is a college that has successfully launched dozens of registered apprenticeship programs, registered apprenticeship degree programs in advanced manufacturing and healthcare and hospitality, information technology, and other areas. And their approach to developing these degree apprenticeship programs is to start with an existing degree program, to work with employers, oftentimes they recruit employers, and to identify what, if any, changes need to be made to a degree program. So sometimes they will substitute some of the for-credit courses as part of the degree pathway. Other times they will introduce non-credit courses if a particular employer that they're working with has specialized training needs that can't be met on the for-credit side of the house. But this approach is a traditional degree apprenticeship and it involves working within the existing system. And in fact, of the degree apprenticeships that we really examined as part of our research, a majority of them are operating within working with an existing degree program and making modifications. Ivy Tech also has a pretty innovative approach to offering degree apprenticeships. So they offer an interdisciplinary Associates of Applied Science degree in industrial technology. Interdisciplinary degrees are not as common at the community college level as they are at the four-year college and university level, but they've managed to build this by really expanding on their statewide elective list, and they basically work with employers to identify a menu of courses that build towards certificates and then build towards certification certificates, technical certificates, which is something that they have in Indiana, and then all of these stacked to a degree. And one thing that they have done, keeping in mind that, you know, an apprentice's educational experience should not necessarily stop once they're done with an apprenticeship, is they've established a partnership with their four-year counterpart in the state to facilitate transfer and the attainment of bachelor's degrees related to industrial technology. Those two examples that I just gave are traditional degree apprenticeships, but there are a couple of really innovative competency-based degree apprenticeships that we've seen. One example is the 1199C Early Childhood Education Degree Apprenticeship, and this is based in the Philadelphia area. There are a couple of community colleges that have worked together with 1199C, which is serving as an intermediary, to work with the existing early childhood education workforce that does not have an associate's degree, but this apprenticeship program is working with these incumbent workers to get them on the path and get them an associate's degree. They work with multiple employers, and again, the 1199C Education Training Fund serves as an intermediary, and they've successfully managed to award credit for the on-the-job learning by having faculty members at the community colleges review portfolios from apprentices and determine whether they've mastered a set of competencies that they ordinarily would learn as part of, you know, traditional classroom work. But the two colleges that are involved, City College of Philadelphia and Delaware County Community College, early on identified 3 courses for which the competencies could be taught on the job. Just an added bonus in order to really facilitate student success, and I'll talk a little bit more about some other strategies. They have maintained a cohort model so that the early childhood workers are staying together and taking classes together, and also in some cases participating in on-the-job learning together, where people are placed at the same employer. They offer, they work with employers to offer release time, and they very deliberately offer professional development to the on the job site mentors to make sure that they're able to support the apprentices as part of this experience. And then last but not least, Norco College here in the great state of California has a pretty innovative competency-based degree apprenticeship program. They currently have one in manufacturing technology and are looking to build more. And they're taking advantage of the California Education Code that allows students to earn up to 16 credits in work experience. So they've, built into the program 4 work-based learning courses, essentially, each of which offer 4 academic credits. These are credits that go towards degree requirements. They're a required component of the degree apprenticeship, and they've managed to do something that we haven't really seen elsewhere in the country, award 16 credits, which is a pretty significant chunk of the 60 that's required for the associate's degree. I want to quickly talk through some broad strategies that we've seen across both degree apprenticeships and college-connected apprenticeships. And again, there's no one size all fits. There's no one size all fits approach. The approach that a community college elects to take really depends on their population, the occupation that they're training for, the employers that they're working for, and their institutional capacity to implement these approaches. But nonetheless, there are a number of really innovative strategies that we've seen as part of our work around course customization, credit for on-the-job learning, classroom instruction, mentorship, cohort development, and support services. So I know I mentioned a couple of examples of how community colleges are working with employers and other stakeholders to offer customized courses, again, substituting for credit courses within an existing pathway to speak more directly to the needs of employers, supplementing non-credit courses. A strategy that we have seen, although it's not very common, is actually going through the process of converting non-credit courses to credit-bearing courses towards a degree. But some other course customization strategies that we've seen have really tried to acknowledge the unique academic needs and learning needs of apprentices. So Trident Tech, for example, will oftentimes front load the technical content for their student apprentices. This is something that their employers really appreciate because it allows the student apprentice to really hit the ground running on the work site and be a productive member of that company. But in the case of 1199C and some of the early childhood education degree apprenticeship programs that we're seeing in the state of Pennsylvania, they've elected to contextualize general education courses. So pulling in courses about child pedagogy into their English course to really make sure that everything that these student apprentices learning at the community college really relates to the work and the learning that they need to apply in the job setting. And then also embedding remediation into academic coursework. This isn't necessarily a strategy that's only conducive for degree apprenticeships, but it's something that we have been seeing across the country. With regards to credit for on-the-job learning, as I mentioned, there are a couple of different ways to offer it: through credit evaluation, through prior learning assessments, through work-based learning courses. Again, the approach that a community college decides to take really depends on their context. And then classroom instruction, and there are trade-offs to the different ways that a community college and employer can offer their classroom instruction. It's most commonly delivered through worksite classroom instruction, but we also, as part of our research, have seen online RTI. This is particularly helpful if an employer cannot or does not offer release time for apprentices to engage in the post-secondary component of their apprenticeship program. We know that community colleges oftentimes offer evening classes or classes during non-work hours. or can even designate specific days for classroom instruction and on-the-job learning, much like a co-op model. And then, employer paid release time is another strategy that we've seen to really reduce some of the barriers to accessing and participating in post-secondary education. And then I'll briefly mention some of the other strategies that we've seen around mentorship, as previously noted. On-the-job mentors play a really critical role in reinforcing the technical contents that apprentices are exposed to. It is, a significant investment on the part of employers to identify mentors and support them in, doing things like assessing learning, especially if a degree apprenticeship is competency-based. So offering ongoing training to job site mentors is something that we've seen as a particularly effective strategy in like the 1199C Early Childhood Education Program that was previously profiled. Offering cohorts is another strategy to support student success. But one thing that, we've heard in talking to community colleges is sometimes it's really challenging to maintain cohorts. If you're working with employers that have onesies and twosies and not a whole lot of apprenticeship slots, then keeping a cohort together is challenging, especially if you're working with multiple employers who have different work schedules, on-the-job training schedules. So that's definitely a consideration for colleges to keep in mind. And then support services. Again, offering childcare, transportation assistance, academic and career advising is not necessarily something that's exclusive to degree apprenticeships. But as we think about designing programs that make sense for incumbent workers or even youth apprentices, it's really important to keep in mind some of the barriers that will prevent them from accessing degree apprenticeships or even college-connected apprenticeships and continuing on in those programs until completion. So the last thing I'll leave you with is a set of design principles for degree apprenticeship. And these design principles are informed based on the research that we've conducted over the last year into the U.S. models that exist, as well as our look at international college-connected and degree apprenticeship models in Switzerland and Germany and now increasingly in the United Kingdom. There are 5 main principles that we think really embody a quality program, one being that they're student-centered. So they really think through what are some of the barriers that students might face in accessing the program and persisting in the program. And how can a college, in some cases, go above and beyond, tap into existing efforts around guided pathways or student supports to really make sure that student apprentices are set up for success. That we also see that high-quality degree apprenticeships are very career-specific. So they're preparing individuals for a specific occupation, and the training that's being offered is training that's really valued across the industry. That they're also permeable, so that they identify as many ways as possible to offer student apprentices academic credit for what they're doing on the job, of course, in the classroom as well. And that's a credit that they're awarding really goes towards degree requirements. The credit that they're awarding can be easily transferred, and again, is still relevant to the field. That programs are portable, so they culminate in credentials of value. Whether it's a degree or in the case of college-connected apprenticeships, post-secondary certificates, and that they're accountable. That they collect data. The college collects data, the employer collects data, and that data is used to really inform program development and refinement for improvement. So I'll stop there, and again, thank you for your interest in your work around apprenticeship and college-connected apprenticeships in particular.
Lul, thanks so much. Yeah, go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lul. This was great. Such a good overview. And it's encouraging to hear how much is being done in this space. Obviously, one of the key benefits of having degree apprenticeships and giving credit for work done is just the fact that there's a certain equity in making sure that you actually get credit for the work that's done, be it in the workplace or in school. Obviously, some of these successes that you've cited are based on a lot of work that was done to make sure that some of the barriers were eliminated. I was just curious, what were some of the biggest barriers that you came across as you looked at these, as you talked to both educators and apprenticeship intermediaries? What were they citing as being the biggest hurdles that they had to overcome?
Yeah, well, perhaps not surprisingly, financing these programs was one of the biggest barriers that we came across. I mean, with traditional apprenticeship programs, one of the advantage of apprenticeships that we've seen in the skills trades that have a rich history is that employers oftentimes split the bill, and they cover the cost of related technical instruction and on-the-job learning. With college-connected apprenticeships and degree apprenticeships, there's the added cost of tuition. And you have some programs in states where they're facilitating policies, California, Texas, being a couple of examples, where there are funding sources to cover tuition, but that's not always the case. In the case of Trident Tech, they mentioned that about half their employers actually cover the cost of tuition because they see the real value in making sure that their apprentices have access to post-secondary degrees. They also have funding from their local chamber to offset the cost, but that's not the case everywhere. So funding was a real barrier. And we've also looked at a couple of youth apprenticeship programs that are college connected. And one of the biggest challenges that we heard from the providers of youth apprenticeship is figuring out the scheduling, which is no small feat when you're trying to make sure a youth fulfills all of their high school degree requirements, but also, it's taking classes at a community college or another college. So kind of working within the limited school day was a particular challenge that we heard on the youth side.
That makes sense. And obviously in California, we actually have some benefits that some other states don't have in terms of the reimbursement, both through RSI, but also if you're at the community college now, you should be able to get FTEs covered. And obviously it was encouraging to see that there are colleges already taking advantage of giving credit for work-based learning. I was curious, so actually let me pause here for a second and ask the audience also for their questions. We have actually 3 questions for you. One of them is on the screen, which is what do you see as the biggest impediment in your environment where you're operating? The other one are questions for Lul or for John that you might have. Please put them in the chat. And then finally, we have a little poll that we also want to run alongside. I think we can do that, Caleb. Can we push the poll out as well?
Yeah, so I'll push the poll out, and Eduardo, if you're able to move the slides back to that spectrum of programs, perfect, just for people's view. And let me ask for folks that are on the line, for apprenticeship program administrators, where would you place your programs on the apprenticeship model spectrum?
So we got these options here from the non-credited traditional apprenticeship all the way to a competency-based degree. So make your choices. Also ask questions in the meantime. And I really liked, and Kristen points out the design principles. And actually, this is a good question that Kristen posed. You should be able to see it there at Lul as well. What are the changes that some of the programs that you profiled have made in order to be able to award give credit or award degrees or follow those design principles that you mentioned?
Yeah, Kristen, that's a really great question. I have to say, you know, the programs, for example, the competency-based degree programs that have really embodied this principle of permeability, that are awarding credit for the on-the-job learning. You know, it's tough for me to say this as like a policy person, but it really was spearheaded by a few committed individuals. So in the case of Norco College's work, Charles Heckles, you know, really latched on to this provision in the California Education Code that allows for up to 16 credits of you know, for work experience, and he just figured out a way. He worked with faculty, and he figured out a way to you know, stand up a series of 4 you know, work experience courses at Norco College, and the way they have it structured is they have a faculty member who, you know, has apprentices who will be in with different employers and possibly in different occupations, but that faculty member is the one that's liaising with employers and working with employers to identify the set of competencies that will be mastered during each of the 4 courses, and then you know, working with employers to assess whether those competencies are met. It took one person really taking advantage of an existing policy, and then for the 1199C program, you know, it took a couple of really committed individuals in their early childhood education department to say, hey, you know, this is an effective model. You know, they're working with early childhood education workers who are not well paid, but there are increasing education requirements in that profession. So to really get ahead of the curve, they really kind of push through the development of this ECE degree apprenticeship, and just, you know, ask themselves, what are we teaching in the classroom that these people already know on the job or can easily learn through the job, and you know, leveraging their existing prior learning assessment systems at the college, they were able to award academic credit for the on-the-job learning. So there, you know, while there were a couple of like really key people who pushed this work forward, every college has a structure for credit for prior learning that they could take advantage of. So it's a really, in some cases, it's really about looking at your existing resources and systems differently to support this really robust education and training model.
Did you come across, by the way, it's interesting, the poll results are up right now, and I hope you can see this, that 75% of the respondents here say that their programs are for credit, or, you know, and a quarter of them say that they're degree bearing. So that is great. That is, in fact, there's no non-credit or non-credit for credit hybrids in this sample. So that's encouraging. I'm curious as to what you found that the respondents that you talked to reported back as being persuasive to a college. How did they persuade a college to move in this direction? And in particular, this is something we hear often, that it's harder sometimes to persuade the faculty to make changes to the way they're teaching things. Is this something that you found? What have you seen as sort of the trajectory at these colleges?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing structurally about kind of where these programs sat at the community colleges that we examined, it was all on the for-credit side. And every program that we talked to that offered degree apprenticeship said that they had the buy-in of their college president. That this was an effort that was supported from the top down. And, you know, some of the colleges said that, you know, they actually, you know, like offering degree apprenticeships can be a revenue source for the college, especially if employers are willing to pay for, you know, classes of related technical instruction for their apprentices only. But I mean, a huge driving force for a lot of the colleges that I spoke to was that offering these more holistic programs will help them meet the needs of their students a little bit better. You know, with some college-connected programs, you know, again, the advantage is that they are preparing apprentices, they're awarding academic credit to apprentices, and for some people, post-secondary certificate is enough, is all that they need in order to enter into an occupation. But for occupations that really require a post-secondary degree, one disadvantage of college-connected programs is it might get a student 75% of the way there, but the onus is on them to kind of navigate additional degree requirements. And this is something that's you know, particularly true for some of the credit evaluation models that we see as part of the RAC initiative, because while students will get bulk credit for the completion of apprenticeship experience, they still have to complete, in some cases, 5 or 6 general education courses in order to get the degree. And for some occupations, they don't need that degree, but we know increasingly that having a college degree is needed for career success. So those are just some things to really keep in mind.
Yeah, I think those are good points. And obviously, in some ways, the degree also, because it's still used as a filter by the workplace often to screen people in, has benefits. And it in some ways, also often is seen as a kind of an equity question, because in one profession you get a degree, in another you don't, but aren't they potentially of equivalent, you know, sort of level of competency? And so creating more equity there is obviously, you know, has some other secondary benefits. So this is fantastic. Thank you so much.